Okay. Good
Well, good
morning.
morning,
Good morning.
everyone.
Good morning. Good
Morning.
morning,
Good morning.
Bonita
And
Good
Harris.
morning.
So happy to have you here. And
Thank
to my
you.
fellow Coffee Talk team here, Slim James Overton and the Colonel. I want to say welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talk. And today we are honored to be joined by someone whose voice and work have shaped the way we understand our community. Our
Aw.
journalist, storyteller, and the face of Dominion Energy, Miss Bonita Billingsley. Bonita spent many years bringing real human stories to light, often in the moments that matter. Billingsley Harris is a familiar public face in Hampton Roads. She's been a local TV reporter, a communications manager for the Norfolk Sheriff's Office, and currently in her role with Dominion Energy. You may have seen her on television reporting on the progress of power outage restorations during storms and hurricanes. Previously, Bonita worked as the communications manager for the Norfolk Sheriff's Office, where she produced motivational videos to help inmates improve their lives and support the sheriff's community outreach program. Bonita started her career as a TV reporter, earning numerous local, regional, and national awards. She worked at WVEC TV in Norfolk, Maryland Public Television, WJZ TV in Baltimore, WFAA TV in Dallas, KOMU TV in Columbia, Missouri, and WXIA TV in Atlanta. She is a magna cum laude graduate of Spelman College in Atlanta and received her master's degree in journalism from the University of Missouri, Columbia. Today, we're going beyond the headlines into the moments, memories, and issues that shaped her journey. So, welcome, Bonita, and we look forward to talking to you on Portsmouth Coffee Talk this morning. But
Thank you.
before
Thank
we
you so
get
much.
started, Slim James Overton has a few words he needs to say.
yeah, I just wanted to say, first, I want to say, don't forget she's a member of Delta Sigma Theta. We don't want
Yes,
to get the
yes,
fellow upset out there.
yes.
And that's a big part of what she does as an
Mhm.
organization, community service, along with all the other things she does. I just wanted to say, last night I got a chance to, as we talk about your influences, Benita, coming up, and I got a chance to listen to a podcast with Dr. Amy Billingsley, talking to Dr. Robert, I think what was his name? Robert Cosby, who from Howard University. And I was struck by that because, of course, we're going to bring up your dad, Dr. Andrew Billingsley. And I was struck by that during that conversation, some of the names that she dropped, both growing up in Illinois and having a class where she was taught by Langston Hughes.
Wow.
And then later on, during her college days, I believe she roomed or knew Jesse Owens' daughter and knew
That's
the
right.
family. And I said, wow, when is it going to stop? All these names, and the Congressman Dunham's came up, and she had worked with on the Clinton campaign, and done all these things, and then she settled in to raise you and your sister, and still sort of assisted your dad in all the things he was doing. And I had to bring that up because two accomplished parents like that. I just wonder, for you when you started your career, and was it pressure, or was it more inspiring to you as you continue, as you started your education? Because having those those foots to fill, or those accomplished people, like I said, it had to be kind of intimidating in a way, but inspiring at the same time. Which one?
Well, it just seemed normal to me because that's just how I grew up.
That
Uh,
was your parents. Yeah.
yeah.
But you amaze me, Slim, because you remember and know all these things that I've forgotten and don't even remember. And so it's just always fun talking with you. And Leah, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. You shared so many good things. I don't know what else we have to talk about. But to answer your question, Slim, I never felt the pressure. I just felt normal growing up. I had a lot of experiences growing up, thanks to my parents, and we lived north, south, east, and west. People often ask me that because I was a military brat, but no, it was because my dad was in higher education. So when I was born, he was at University of California, Berkeley, and then we moved to Howard University, and then Morgan State University in Baltimore, and then he went to University of Maryland. And by the time he did that, I was on my own going away to school, and I never felt the pressure. Honestly, I just probably pressure myself because I like to make sure that I'm doing good things. And I do always, they did always teach us, to whom much is given, much is required. And I've always felt that standard and never felt like I was better than anybody or, different than anybody. Just we're all in this together and we have to look out for each other and help each other grow.
Yeah. And, I mentioned about she did that name dropping, but to them back then, that was just someone they worked with. It sounds amazing to us now because these people are historic, they've made history during their lives, but it just amazed me, just hearing her, how casually she dropped the names of these people and our mouths were, dropping open because she had those experiences with them, but it all shaped what she was doing and how dedicated that era was of people and that were just trying to do the work to advance, our community.
That's right.
And you mentioned earlier about being at an event recently about Scott's birthday and how amazing it was to see people wanting to get involved.
Yes, very encouraging.
Politically, and it was kind of encouraging because that's what we need today. So I just wanted to bring that up, and we can kind of go back what got you started. But I just ran across it, just looking for information. And, I was floored by that because I didn't see it anywhere else. But to her explaining was amazing.
Oh, sorry. You probably saw it on the History Makers site because my mom is also very involved with the History Makers.
She mentioned that, yeah.
The largest archive of African-American stories. And so that might be where you saw her story because a lot of times she's the one behind the scenes. So I appreciate you starting off talking about Mom because she is an amazing woman and she's the force behind all of us in the family. But she doesn't always take the spotlight or she doesn't often take the spotlight for herself. So that was a rare interview that you saw. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, yes, indeed. All right, I'll yield to my co-host.
Bonita,
Yes,
I think I want to start on your journalism part of your experience first. And I'd like to know what inspired you to pursue a career in journalism?
You want the short story or the long story?
Oh, you can either way you can give a little bit of both, okay?
Okay. Well, I often tell the story about how when we were young, my parents used to read to my sister and I a lot at night. And now I read to my daughters a lot. I believe that reading is the best free thing you can do for your child. But I start there because my dad used to always tell different stories about, how he grew up or read stories to us. But one of his favorite fiction stories was some version of The Lion and the Hunter. And at the end of his stories, the hunter always defeated the lion.
Exactly.
And as we got older, we just started asking him more questions like, well, Dad, didn't you say the lion is the smartest hunter in the jungle? And he's like, yes, that's right. And we're like, and didn't you say the lion is one of the fiercest, strongest animals in the jungle? And he said, that's true, girls. And we're like, and Daddy, didn't you say that the lion is actually king of the jungle? And he's like, that's right. Just please, we're paying attention. You've been paying attention, girls. You're so right. You got all that right. And then we're like, but Daddy, then how come the hunter always defeats the lion? And he said, well, girls, that's because the lion needs to tell more stories.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And of course, it's an African proverb, but it was one that just stuck with me growing up. And I felt like it was important for us to tell our own stories, the stories of our community, the stories of other people that wouldn't be heard otherwise. And I grew up, Cicely Tyson was a major role model for me because she would only take parts that were positive. And it was very disturbing to grow up and see negative images of African Americans on television. When I was young, I used to be mad at my mom because she wouldn't let us watch Shirley Temple or The Little Rascals, all those fun children's shows. But it was because of the negative depictions of African Americans.
Exactly.
And as I grew up, I just began to appreciate that and want to do what I could to show people the depth of our community and the wonderful beauty of our community. And when I went to Spelman College, which I loved, best 4 years of my life, amazing experience. I was like, well, I'm going to try different subjects to see what it is I want to major in. And I couldn't figure out what I wanted to major in. I tried English. And I was like, okay, I really like English. I tried political science. I was like, well, that's really interesting. I like political science. I even had math and computer science. I was like, okay, well, I'm pretty good at that. And I kept trying things to see what it was I wanted to major in. Well, I ended up majoring in Spanish because I love people. I love communicating with the different people. I love our Black and brown communities. And I thought, well, if I major in Spanish, then I can learn Spanish. And it's also kind of like majoring in English, but I'm learning a language because you learn a lot of grammar and things like that. And it wasn't until, well, after I graduated from Spelman, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but my guidance counselor said, well, you really should go into math and computer science because that's where the jobs are. That's where the best best income jobs are, best salary positions. And so I went to IBM, which was the big blue at the time, the big computer company. And I got a job at IBM selling, I was on the team that sold copiers. And I thought, well, at least in sales, it'll be a little bit more involved with other people and connecting with people and not just about the technical part. But after a year of doing that, I realized this is really not what I was meant to do. And I was always interested in television news, interested in communications and public speaking, that kind of thing. And I thought to myself, I had this light bulb moment where I said to myself, I would rather try to do what I really want to do and fail than look back and say, I never even tried. But when I had expressed it before, people were like, oh, you can't do TV news. It's too hard to get into. You have to be prettier. You have to have all these things that you don't have. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try it. And so I quit the job at IBM, went back to Atlanta, worked as a secretary in the Atlanta University Center, and I did my research. And I found the top 3 journalism schools in the country at the time were Northwestern University, Syracuse University, and University of Missouri. Still amazing journalism schools. Not sure if they're still the top 3, but they might be. And once I was accepted to all 3, I went and talked to the news directors in Atlanta, the ABC, the CBS, and the NBC affiliate. And being, young and excited, college graduate from Spelman, all of them agreed to see me. I told them I just wanted to have, 10-minute, 15-minute informational interview. And so they all agreed to see me, and they're like very competitive with each other. So it's not like they hang out or talk to each other. But I said, well, of the 3 schools, Syracuse, Northwestern, and University of Missouri, which one would you be most likely to hire someone from? And all 3 of them said University of Missouri. And I was shocked because I wanted to go to New York or Chicago. I had applied for University of Missouri because it was one of the top ones. And I said, well, I'm going to give myself the best chance. And they all said University of Missouri because at University of Missouri, they own their own newspaper, they own their own radio station, and they own their own television station, which is a commercial affiliate in the market. So when you graduate, you don't just graduate with an education and studio, kind of mock training. You actually are doing the work. And that's why they said that you'd be more likely to do that. So I accepted at the University of Missouri. And once I accepted at the University of Missouri, then I was qualified to do an internship. And so for the first time in my life, I did an internship at the NBC station in Atlanta, WXIA. And that was the first time in my life I felt like this is what I was born to do. I love this. And it turns out that changing majors a lot, changing, different subjects and liking a lot of different subjects is not that uncommon for journalists, especially journalists like me. I was mostly a general assignment reporter, and I liked doing different things, something different every day. And I got that experience for the first time as an intern after I had already graduated. I was getting ready to go to graduate school, and it was just an excellent experience. And University of Missouri was an excellent experience. I cried all the way there from hot Atlanta
to Missouri,
Midwest Missouri. And I grew up on the East Coast, and the TV station was in the middle of a cow pasture. And I was like, Lord, what in the world have I gotten myself into? but it was an absolutely excellent experience. And I'm the kind of person that I wanted to learn how to do it right before I actually started working in the field. But in television news, you can do it. You can just start in a really small market and make mistakes and figure it out as you go. And then you gradually move up to bigger markets. Or you could go somewhere like University of Missouri and learn the principles and the basics. And then I feel like you get started with a much better head start.
You know, and Bonita, and you've always been such an amazing storyteller. Always. I've always enjoyed watching you on the news. And is there a memorable story that you've covered? And if there is one, why has it stuck with you?
Oh, I had so many good ones. And there's two examples I'm trying to think about. But the one that really tops them all is the story of Carl Brashear, the first African-American Navy diver. When I met him, he was retired from the Navy. He was the first African-American Navy diver, and later he became the first amputee Navy diver after he was injured in the line of duty. And they retired him with honors, and they were like, "You gave us a wonderful career. Thank you so much. Go home and be retired." And he was like, "I'm not ready to go home." He lost his leg. He's like, "I'm not ready to go home. I'm not going to let anybody steal my dream." And he worked out because you had to be really strong. You have to be really strong to be a Navy diver.
Today we're going beyond the headline into the moment.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't sure. I thought you were saying something to me. But he was just an amazing and inspirational person. And when I went to meet him for the first time, he showed me his I Love Me room where he had all of his awards and accomplishments and everything. And he told me how he was really trying to do a movie about his life. And so I interviewed him a few times and we became really good friends. And he did end up doing a movie about his life. I think Bill Cosby actually helped him get his start. And for those of you who haven't seen, let's see, what is the name of his story? It's not The Navy Diver. It's The Men of Honor. If any of you haven't seen that movie, Men of Honor, about Carl Brashear, our own Hampton Roads, person, amazing, inspiring person. That's probably my favorite story and my favorite person that I got to meet through the news at Channel 13 that forever inspired me.
Wonderful. Co-host, any questions?
Yeah, Colonel,
I just want to bring up this story. I want to bring up this story before the Colonel gets in there before I forget. And I told Bonita about this. She was in the midst of, Dr. Mayor Holly's recall and then his comeback. And I remember seeing an interview. She was interviewing former Mayor Gloria Webb. And it was during the time when Holly was going to make his comeback after he had, been disgraced. And Bonita was sitting there and she asked her, what do you think about former Mayor Holly getting back into the race? Gloria Webb just put out a big laugh like it was ridiculous. And at that moment, her cameraman panned to Bonita and she sat there, like, this is a serious question. She did not blink or anything. And it was so ironic because, Mayor came back and defeated her. But the question she asked, Mayor Webb thought it was a joke, him coming back. Nowhere in the world he can come back and beat me. But I just remember the look on her face when they panned the camera after you asked that question and she broke out laughing was a classic for me. And I've been looking for that. But, that was so long ago, it's kind of hard. I would have to probably go into the 13 channel archives or something like that to find that. But if I ever find that, I'm going to post it.
I don't even remember it. I don't have no recollection of it, but it's wonderful to hear the story. And I'm glad that that I was, operating with integrity. Let's put it that way.
Yes. It looked like you wanted to say, well, I'm not going to say it looked like what you probably wanted to say, but that look was just something classic that I wish other people could see. I just had to bring that up. Colonel, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's good. It's all good. It's nice to see, reminiscing on time and on history. But as I listen to you, Bonita, I look at how you grew up and the umbrella, and I'll say the umbrella of education starting from your parents and bringing you through the educational system, K through 12, and then also into the collegiate and then postgraduate, and ending up at University of Missouri, what you say is one of the top 3 journalism schools. And I've never been there when I was
I hadn't either.
And but I did go to Ball State, was recognized as one of the top journalism schools in the country. I think David Letterman, or I think he founded it or gave him a bunch of money. But I was struck there, and I had to speak there one time, and I was struck by the lack of diversity at that university and at that school of journalism there, what was supposed to be recognized as one of the top journalism schools. And then I look back how the connection of today, when we have this new regime that is anti-education and anti-history. And as we look at anti-history, as they try to whitewash, and not even whitewash, to eliminate all references to Black and brown people across the country, as we slip backwards to what I think is leading us to a day or the times of going back to segregation. And that's what they want, is to put us back there, to destroy. If they destroy our education, destroy our history, then they can do the next steps of what they want to do. Because you, as a journalist, long history, I'd like to ask you about, what do you think about the assault? I mean, the actual assault on the First Amendment and our freedom of the press by this regime?
Well, I think it started even before this regime, but of course it's much worse now. I mean, just as we see big business taking over America, we saw the merger of the Virginian Pilot and the Daily Press, a few years ago, and we're seeing that kind of thing all over the country. And we're seeing TV news shrink with fewer reporters to cover things, and they have less money because there's less advertising dollars. I mean, when I was growing up, and you guys probably, are the same, there was 3 TV stations. There was the ABC, CBS, and NBC, as I was mentioning earlier. And so there was only 3 stations that divided up the advertising dollars. And now we have, over 200 stations that people can choose from. And so the advertising dollars are splintered quite a bit. And that's one reason why the media has been splintered quite a bit and has been weakened. But I think it's a tragedy. I think that the foundation of democracy is, journalism is key to democracy, that all Americans say that we believe in. And if we want to be patriotic, I think we should believe in freedom of the press. And it amazes me that people can say they're patriotic, but then not show any democratic principles whatsoever. We're, supposed to have free speech. We're supposed to, have the right to whatever religion that we want, whatever opinions that we want, political views. And that's what makes America great. And America's always been known as the great melting pot, where people from all over come together and form a bond. And I always kind of considered it more like a stew or a gumbo, because, we didn't all just become one flavor. And that's what makes our country rich. And now, to see leaders and this administration try to subjugate any opinion or differences that don't agree with them, that's not democracy. And I don't understand how you can say you're a patriot and not support democracy.
Exactly.
Well, you know what they throw around, and I'm gonna say they, and I'm gonna say they are the GOP, the old GOP and the new GOP, or MAGA. Throw around the word patriotism as if it's a $2 or a wooden nickel. They really don't believe in patriotism, because if you do any analysis, they are the most unpatriotic group that we've ever had in our nation's history. And that's one reason we want to throw out history when we do that. And then, so you are correct that any dissent, they are targeting you. And you can, for those who out there that has never picked up a book, and as Joe Scarborough says, Google it, turn on your Google machine and look at how they've gone after law firms and not got settlements, but got bribes paid. and so they don't support any Democratic issues out there, and they've gone after companies because they don't agree with what this regime, and I don't call them administration, this regime has to say. And anybody that says anything about them, they come after you. And even over the weekend, I think it's on Friday, they even went after after a judge and arrested her for doing her constitutional duties. And so we have way crossed the Rubicon of our democracy failing as we speak. And that's why I say that in strong words that we are heading back to segregation, because that's where we're heading. Because look at all of the majority of these actions that he's putting in, these proclamations that they are anti-Black and brown against us. And if they destroy the economic background or places that we can gain money and destroy us economically, then it makes it easier to blame us for our country's ills. And you notice that the economy is in shambles. Interest rates are starting to climb. Unemployment is starting to climb. They're already talking about a recession coming in there. For those on your Google machine, turn on your 401k plan and look where it was when Joe Biden had it rolling. Now look at it. We've lost over $6 trillion economic wealth just in our 401k plans. And look at the tens of thousands of people that had government jobs that are now out of work, looking for a job that's not even going to pay closely what you're going to do. Look at the state jobs that they're getting ready that they're letting people go. Look at the private sector starting to hemorrhage and letting people go. But you, that is now on those Google machines trying to see what's happening, look what you voted for. Only because you didn't want a Black female to be at head of state. And there's two reasons why you didn't want a Black female. And I just summed it up. She was Black and she was a female, and you couldn't see it again. So what say you, Bonita?
A lot of people said that President Obama got such a hard time from the Republican side, and they wouldn't let him accomplish anything. They wouldn't agree with anything that he was trying to do because he was Black. And I'm sure that was part of it. But I also think that it's not just about race and gender. I think it's about green. I think it's because they wanted to level the playing field. And there are certain people in the top 20% that don't want the playing field to be level, because that takes away power from them. I mean, there's only so much of a pie. There's only so many slices of a pie. And the top 1% of Americans, and this was a few years ago, so they probably own more now, but the top 1% of Americans used to own 50% of the wealth in this country, 50% of the wealth. And it might be even more now. And so if you're talking about cutting up the pie and they have 50% of the pie, that means the other 99% of us have to share the other 50%, the other 50% of the pie. And the top 20% of Americans own 94% of the pie. So that means 80% of us are sharing 6%, 8% of the pie, this small sliver. And they're trying to grow their portion of the pie, and ours is shrinking. So the gap between the rich and the poor is growing. So I feel like it has a lot to do with green. I think if President Obama or Vice President Kamala Harris had come in and said, "Oh, we're gonna," and shown all the principles that they are trying to espouse, then maybe they would have supported them more. But the other thing that troubles me, and I'm not an expert on this, I don't even follow the news as closely as I should because it's so discouraging. After I had children, I got out of the habit of watching the news every day because I didn't want them to grow up thinking the world is a negative place where everybody's shooting each other or stealing from each other. So I'm certainly not an expert. But one of the things that troubles me is I think we as African Americans have good reason to be upset. Of course, every day in the news, there's something. But I think we also have to figure out how to share common ground, find common ground with other people. That's one of the things that Dr. King did so well. You know, it wasn't just a Black issue that we didn't have civil rights and we weren't allowed to go to the restaurants. He managed to pull in everybody that also believed in what's right, that also had integrity. And I think that there are a lot of people in America that believe the same things we do, that we're shutting out by just saying it's a Black issue. You know, so we just have to stick together. We're a small percent. We're at what, 12% of the population? We can't win if we just say it's a Black issue.
Exactly.
And I'm disturbed that even those of us that believe in democracy and freedom of speech and rights for everyone, that we're even, you know, fighting with each other. You know, and I feel like we have to figure out how to bridge the gap. And somehow the MAGA group, they grew for a reason. I don't agree with it, but there's some gap that they felt like they were missing in America that made them want to go to such an extreme. So how do we tackle that? And how do we get, you know, people that are intelligent and have ethics and integrity all on the same page?
Yes.
That's what I think we need to work on as a country.
Well, Bonita, during your
you know, I see some similarities between you and the Colonel, Bonita. When the Colonel was active duty, he couldn't say a lot. And when you were on the news, you couldn't say a lot, but you saw a lot. And now we're benefiting from the nature of your experience, what you saw firsthand when you couldn't speak out now. And I appreciate both of y'all's commentary. But I want to ask you, you know, all the things you did growing up in your household, it was just mom and dad, but they were doing some amazing things. And couple that with you being expelled at Spelman and changing your major, I don't know how many times, and just having all those experiences, you know, that prepared you for a lot of the things you did in your life. A lot of people didn't know that you were served on Chesapeake School Board at one time. You did a stint there. And some of the other jobs. Talk about, now you're with Dominion Energy. So you've had several positions there. So talk us about the different jobs you had there leading up to what you're doing now with Dominion Energy.
Okay. Well, we talked a little bit about the journalism career and me being a news reporter. But I think you're absolutely right, Slim, that Colonel and I had a chance to see a lot of things. And Colonel, you probably feel the same way. We used to be able to get along with friends that had different political views, but we could still get along and share, you know, similar values, especially people of faith. You know, you didn't have to be a Democrat or Republican to, you know, to have the same values and recognize what's right and what's wrong and want to have equality for everyone. And I think that one of the reasons why I try to bring people together comes from my dad. One of the books that, so you know, my dad just turned 99 years old. I know you know that, Slim. I don't know if you know that, Leah and Colonel.
Yes.
And he's amazing. He's still doing public speaking and everything. And he's working on his 10th book, by the way. So this was his 8th book. It's called Yearning to Breathe Free, and it's about the story of Robert Smalls and his families.
Robert Smalls, my mother's from Beaufort, South Carolina.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
It's not as well known outside of South Carolina, but it's an amazing story, and it really should be a movie so that more people can recognize, you know, how amazing Robert Smalls was. But I bring him up now, and I am going to get back to your question, Slim, but the reason why I bring him up is because Robert Smalls was born enslaved in South Carolina. The short story is he escaped slavery by stealing a ship and from the Confederates and delivering it to the Union Army. He became a war hero, helped win the war, came back home, ran for Congress, pre-Reconstruction, and served, I think, 5 terms in Congress, founded the first public school that African Americans and all children could go to, and did some amazing things. But one of the most amazing things, one of my favorite stories about Robert Smalls is, after he came back and the Emancipation Proclamation happened and he's serving in Congress and the family that owned him had gone into poverty, he actually bought the house that he was raised in as a slave. His mother worked in the house and he had some privileges because he was able to grow up in the house. And he was smart, and the master would take him places and teach him things. And when he came back and the family that owned him was destitute, he bought the house that he lived in as a slave and brought them into the house and took care of them. And once the master died, the husband died, he took care of the mistress
Mhm.
until she died. And he actually put her in his master bedroom and brought her breakfast every morning before he went to work. And she said to him, Robert, you're an important man now. You shouldn't be taking time to serve me. You need to go to work and do these great things. She didn't say she didn't want to be served. She just said, she probably shouldn't be him. but he said, Madam, when I was a child, you took care of me, and I will do no less for you.
Mm.
And to me, that is an amazing story of the power of forgiveness.
Yes.
And the power that we can all get along if we just try and we find common ground. And so that's why I think it's so important for us to reach out and not just focus on our own issues, because there are a lot of people in this country. I mean, President Trump won by less than a percentage point?
Less than a percentage point.
Less than a point. So what about the other half of us? We're not all Black.
Exactly.
But we all care about, doing the right thing and the Constitution and American principles. So let's try to unite. I think that's where our power lies, when we unite. And I think that's what Dr. King was so brilliant about, in doing. And we need another leader that can bring us all together, like a Martin Luther King. That was amazing. So I think because of that, my childhood growing up, and also I had lots of experiences. I've been in all white environments, all Black environments, mixed environments. So I feel comfortable in almost every environment. So that's part of growing up, but also part of being a reporter. And then after being a reporter, I married late in life. I met my husband, Cadillac Harris, who we probably have to mention him too, because in this community, everybody knows my husband.
Yes.
I met him a few months after I moved here at a party, and we started to date, but it took us a while to figure out, what we really need to do. So we didn't get married for 7 years. So I got married late in life. I always wanted to have children, always wanted to be a mother. I was 38 before I had my first child. And at that point, I realized I can't just chase news stories. I can't just be woken up in the middle of the night for a fire, or there literally happened a bear on the side of 264, go see what's going on, go see if you can get picked. So I was like, I need a more family-friendly position. So that's what made me leave TV news. I was anchoring the 10 o'clock news at the time, which our Pilot 13 newscast, which you all probably remember was a great innovative partnership between Channel 13, the Virginian Pilot, and Cox Cable. People still remember it. And I think that was such a wonderful experience. But I was anchoring the 10 o'clock news. And as a new mom, I didn't want to miss dinner time and bath time and story time with my baby, with my child. So I was doing a speech at the Norfolk Sheriff's Office at the Norfolk Jail. My friend was the Director of Education, Pamela Hicks, and she invited me to be the keynote speaker for her students, the inmates that had gotten their GED degrees. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I'm always, very supportive of, because education, lack of education, is one of the biggest reasons we have this recidivism rate, right? So anyway, so I went to be the keynote speaker there, and Sheriff Bob McCabe was the sheriff then, and I just happened to mention to him that I was looking for a more family-friendly job, and he said, "Really?" And I was offered a job. I was offered a job on the spot, and I felt like, okay, God is working things out. So I did, talk to the station. They tried to get me to stay as a general assignment reporter, but I would have had to be live at 6 every day, and I wouldn't know what time I was going to be getting off to pick up my child from daycare, and daycare closed at 6 o'clock sharp, and the daycare that we had already found and loved. So I left and I went to work at the Norfolk Sheriff's Office. And that was an amazing experience as well. One of the first things I did there was start an inmate motivational video series with a photographer friend from Channel 13, Ron Loving, may he rest in peace.
Yes,
he also
Ron,
was a photographer in Atlanta when I got my first job at WXIA. So we actually got to work together at WXIA, and he helped me get my start. And then he came to WVEC as a photographer. And then when I went to the Norfolk Sheriff's Office, he and I worked together to tell stories about former inmates that had managed to beat the odds and overcome their challenges and become successful, owning their own businesses or different things. And so we told those stories like a news story, and Sheriff McCabe had them run throughout the jail so that inmates could see that others had been able to be successful after having the same experience they're having. Because I believe that if you can't see it, you can't be it.
Exactly.
And you'd be amazed how many inmates never had a chance to even experience love or opportunities. And when they saw it, I hope that it meant something to them. And a quick story, just maybe about a year ago, I was walking in downtown Norfolk by myself, and this kind of scruffy looking guy was looking at me. And I was like, should I be alarmed? Should I be concerned? But I looked into his eyes, and he had kind eyes, and he smiled as he approached me, and he said, "You're Bonita Billingsley." And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." He said, "I remember you from when I was locked up in the Norfolk jail. You're the one that used to show us those stories, those news stories." And I said, "Yes, sir, that's right. I'm so glad you remember that." And he said, "And before that, you were on Channel 13 News." And I said, "That's right, I was." He said, "And now you're at Dominion Power."
So you followed your career.
"You always got a job." He said, so I think about him often because he doesn't know how much he encouraged and inspired me to feel like, okay, well, maybe I am making a difference. You just never know until you really don't. But sometimes you just don't know. So I love that opportunity at the Norfolk Sheriff's Office. And another thing that I really loved doing at the Norfolk Sheriff's Office was starting the Norfolk Youth Football Camp with the sheriff. So the sheriff met with my husband, who was the head coach at, he was at Maury High School. And then I don't remember if he was at Maury, if he had already gotten to Indian River High School at this. I think he might have already been at Indian River High School at this time. But Sheriff McCabe said, well, if we were to do some sort of football camp for the kids in Norfolk, what do you think would be the best age group? And my husband said, definitely middle school age children, boys mostly. Of course, there were some girls that came to the camp too, because they don't have at that time, they don't have a middle school program for football. They just started in high school, basically, unless they had community groups and, AAU groups and things like that. And so my husband helped the sheriff, and my husband and I worked together with the sheriff to start the Norfolk Youth Football Camp, which was originally called the Cadillac Harris Skills and Drills Camp. But then for political reasons, it became, it became the Norfolk Youth Football Camp. Not just political reasons, it was for everybody. And we had some amazing speakers. Senator Aaron Rouse would come and speak. He wasn't the senator then. I'm trying to think, he may have even just graduated from Virginia Tech or something like that, but he always had a heart for the community. And he grew up in public housing in Virginia Beach and Norfolk, and he would tell the kids about that and how he went to Virginia Tech and how football scholarship helped him, become successful. And he's just an amazing person. He was one of the great speakers that came. We would have other NFL greats like Darren Perry, Plexico Burris from Virginia Beach. Right after winning the Super Bowl, he came out and played with the kids and threw the ball and things like that. And so that was another great thing I really enjoyed doing at the Norfolk Sheriff's Office, because for me, wherever I'm working, it has to be about giving back to the community in one form or another. So when the job at Dominion Energy came up, so before Dominion Energy, my girls were growing up, and I didn't want them to think, the only thing, they didn't know anything about me in news, and they would just be annoyed, and people would stop me in the grocery store and say, "Hey, I remember you from the news." They're like, "Oh, Mom, come on. Could you please come on?" But all they knew about me was that I worked at the jail. And I thought, I don't want them to just grow up knowing me as somebody that works at the jail. I wanted them to know more about what I thought was important, not just raising people up, but also education and things like that. So that's when I was recruited to run for school board in Chesapeake. And at first I was like, I'm not a politician. I'm not an elected official. I never thought about something like that. I just thought about being active with the PTA. That's what my mom always did. Matter of fact, she was always the president of the PTA growing up. So we couldn't get in any trouble because she would know about it. And we get in trouble at school and at home. But I thought I would just be in the PTA. But then I thought, well, the school board is an opportunity to influence education and be a liaison to parents and families. That's kind of like the PTA, but just on a different level. So I ran for Chesapeake School Board. That was a really exciting and fun experience. It was a whole family was involved in the campaign, and it was just a wonderful campaign. And I was able to win. A lot of people said that was incredible that the first time I ran, I won. Even Mayor Bill Ward said he had to run like 3 or 4 times before he won.
Especially for Chesapeake.
Right, especially for Chesapeake. That's right.
Chesapeake, yes.
Right. But I think because I had been a reporter, a lot of people kind of knew who I was, and I was kind of a non-political person, and it is a nonpartisan election. So I loved that experience, and I served on the Chesapeake School Board for 4 years. And after I got on the Chesapeake School Board, I thought, well, I don't want to just work for an employer who only cares about Norfolk, because of course the sheriff is a political position and his focus is Norfolk. I want to work for someone that cares about all of Hampton Roads. And then my friend Janet Roach at Channel 13, my longtime friend, she actually is the reason I met my husband, but that's another story. But she told me about the position at Dominion Energy, and Chuck Penn, another one of my mentors and good friends. And we were active in the Hampton Roads Black Media Professionals together back in the day. Slim, when you remember, we had the Excel Awards and everything at the Harrison Opera House. So he was actually leaving, and he was a spokesperson for Dominion Energy. So I interviewed for the job and got the job. And that was just another amazing experience. Never saw myself in corporate America, never saw myself as an elected official, but one thing just kind of led to another. And I love the fact that Dominion Energy also boosts all communities. It's important to us to give back to the communities where we live, work, and play. And Dominion does a lot of grants for K through 12 schools, for higher education, for nonprofits, and community events, and all of that appealed to me greatly. So I left the Norfolk Sheriff's Office and went to work for Dominion Energy, and that was 14 plus years ago now.
Has it been 14 years already?
One on my 15th year.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Time does move on, does it not?
It really does. It's kind of like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes.
The faster it goes, that's for sure. But Bonita, this is just evident of the fact that you are a master storyteller, because you just keep people engaged and interested in what you're talking about, And I have to get your father's book, because I grew up knowing about Robert Smalls, because I spent all my summers in Beaufort, South Carolina. And Robert Smalls is buried at Tabernacle Baptist Church, which was my mother's home church. And
yes.
When we go there. So I must get your father's book and read up on that portion of his life that I did not know. But I did grow up knowing about Robert Smalls and all about his life since being
amazing
a part of the Beaufort family.
Yes.
So it's encouraging. Read that book. I'm sure it's very interesting, and I'm just looking forward to getting a copy for myself.
It's fascinating. I will get you a copy, Leah, and I will have Dad sign it for you.
Please have him to sign it. I would love it, and I would be the envy of all my relatives in South Carolina. Believe me.
Awesome.
So, Bonita, let me ask you one question. When you were reporting, did you ever face a tough situation where you had to make an ethical decision about reporting on that situation?
That's a good question. A couple things come to mind. My sheriff that I worked for at the Norfolk Sheriff's Office had gotten in some trouble before I came to work there. Yes. It was a credit card scandal, if you all recall. And I covered that some as a reporter. And he felt like one of the reasons why he hired me is because he felt like I was an objective reporter that didn't just trash him. One of the other stations did like a 7-minute documentary on it, which just was scathing against him. And the average news story was 1 minute and 20 seconds. So 7 minutes was an unheard of amount of time to cover a story and to cover a crime that he was accused of and not convicted of. And he just said to me after I worked for him that he always felt like I did a fair job. I'm going to report the facts, but I'm also going to give him a chance to respond. And I felt like as a reporter, I never felt too torn, because I felt like my job is to tell both sides of the story, or all sides of the story when there are more than two sides, and let people figure things out for themselves. That's part of what a democracy is all about. Like we were talking about earlier, you share the facts and then people can figure out for themselves what they believe. So I never felt too torn. One story I covered, one day I did actually, sorry, you guys, somebody that wants to say hello to you all. Just popping in.
Hey, y'all.
Hello, how you doing, young man? How are you?
Good.
What's up, Coach?
Hey, what's going on?
We were talking about you in the Norfolk football camp that we started, and some of the great things that we were able to do there with Sheriff McCabe.
Oh yeah, we did some wonderful things and really set some kids up for life. Some of them are now in the sheriff's office and working. So that's a great thing.
Right. We want to make sure they stay on the right side of the bars.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Stay between the lines. Stay between the lines, we say.
Well, this is a twofold pleasure here to have both of you on today. We were betting on Bonita, but now we got both of you here. That's a blessing.
Well, I guess we'll have to go for another hour.
Yes, we need to
No,
go
I'm
for
gonna let
another
y'all
hour.
have it because Daddy got some work things he's got to do. He got a schedule.
He's supposed to be retired, but he's not retired. He's still working and helping young people. And we actually want to start our own podcast similar to what you guys are doing, to help young athletes get to follow their dreams and get to the next level.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
That's,
so
that's excellent.
you'll have to invite us on sometime so we can talk more about that.
Yeah, that would be great.
We will do that. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let y'all go.
Okay. All right, honey.
See
Thanks
you
for
in a
Good
stopping
seeing
by.
you.
Take care.
Benita, I wanted to mention, I put up Terrence Austin, being from South Carolina. He's too interested in the Robert Smalls book. And the reason I put that up because he and his wife, they have a bookstore, black owned and operated, called the Printed Word Bookstore in Churchland. So I'll put him in touch with you. He might want to make sure that that book is in his bookstore.
That would be wonderful. And maybe we could plan a book signing there.
That would be
Yeah.
wonderful.
People to come.
Yeah, he would love that. He does a lot of that, so
Yeah.
so I'll put you all together.
Excellent.
I think Colonel had something.
Okay.
Yeah, before I ask this last question, I got two comments. Bonita, you talked about Martin Luther King and how he brought other people together. And not to say this issue with this regime is all black and white, but Martin Luther King brought people together because he made a statement and I'll paraphrase it. He talked about the roads and bridges that we all walk that need to be repaired or walked by all. And then the other thing too is we also traveled back and we talked about the money and how it's splitting up the smaller and smaller pieces of the pie. But if you peel back the onion, you look at how Elon Musk with his Doge, or Destroying Our Government Effectively committee, has now said they only save the government, and it's not really saving $450 million. I'm sorry, $150 million versus it's really cost because of the productivity and people leaving with the buyouts. It's cost the government 3 times as much of that money he says he saved. But you can also look at these robber barons. Since he's gotten access, he got a $450 million contract to with the State Department by itself to put these armored Tesla vehicles across the world that nobody really wanted. And his Starlink company has gotten the no bid contract to redo the communication system at TSA. Planes are falling out the sky now. We've had more wrecks than we've had in the last 10 years, and now you want to turn it over to a company that has no track record and by all practical means does not work and it's not there, but we're given no bid contracts. And now the Doge is looking at DOD contracts. And so they are just robbing, and Musk is just robbing us blindly. But let me circle back to what you're doing at Dominion Resources. And I'll make a disclaimer here too, because I am also a stockholder in Dominion Resources. Love the company, corporate responsibility and all that. But their Dominion Resources or Dominion Energy customer stock plan is a way to build wealth. And if you can you address that? Because I can tell you that, I've accumulated several thousand shares of that stuff, and I haven't paid my dividends. I haven't paid a utility bill in the last 10 years just because of my quarterly dividends. But can you explain how that works so we can, since you mentioned these young athletes and money, and this will be a segue into another show about institutional wealth, how that works.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for bringing up Dominion Energy stock. We are very proud of how well it has done over the years. Even when it dips, it's always going to come back, right? Because we're always going to need electricity, and we need more and more electricity. I'm not an expert about the stock side of it. I just know that I have some. I have some. And if people stop me in the grocery store to ask me, was I on the news? The second thing they ask me about the most is, are you going to let us know when the lights come back on after a storm? And the third thing they ask me about the most is our stock. Thanks so much for Dominion Energy stock. One person told me they bought like a share of Dominion Energy stock for her niece every year for her birthday. And by the time she was 18 years old, it paid for her full college education.
Mm-hmm.
So investing is important. You're absolutely right. We need more financial literacy in our community so we can see how we can grow wealth better. Oh gosh, you made me think about a couple of things I want to share before we run out of time. One of the community things that I really enjoy doing is Envision Lead Grow. I'm on the board of Envision Lead Grow, which is a nonprofit for girls and women. And our CEO, Dr. Angela Reddick, she bought the Mustard Seed Place in Portsmouth, which you all are probably familiar with. And it has been a wonderful, I bring that up, Colonel, because it's been a wonderful way that women and young people and all of the community, but especially women and young people, because we probably have the biggest deficiency of knowledge of financial literacy. She makes sure that we all learn about financial literacy. And the girls in her program that start, I think at like 11 years old, they start right before middle school. They become thousandaires before they get to high school, which I think is incredible. And so she's doing some wonderful things with her nonprofit and in partnership with the city of Portsmouth. And also at Dominion Energy, our stock did dip for a while, and so we had a big restructuring. Our CEO, Bob Blue, is brilliant and kind, and I'm just so proud to work for someone like him. It's one of the reasons why I still love working at Dominion Energy, because of his leadership. And with all the attacks on DEI, he stands by. Diversity is not just the right thing to do, but it's good for business. And I think that he is already making some great strides that have helped our stock grow. So just hang in there, because it's going to keep growing. We have wonderful projects like the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project that's bringing a lot of opportunities to our area, a lot of job opportunities. I'm sure you all are familiar with that little project that we have 27 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach.
That's right.
We've got partnerships with almost every city in Hampton Roads in wonderful ways. At the Portsmouth Terminal, Marine Terminal, we have a monopile facility where that's where we've staged all the monopiles for all of the wind turbines, that they're like the base of the wind turbines that are going to provide energy for over 600,000 homes. In Chesapeake, we're about to do a partnership with Green Links in Chesapeake, which is investing almost $700 million in the area, and it's on the border of Chesapeake and Portsmouth, for a high voltage cable facility that's slated for completion in 2028. That's going to bring a lot more jobs. So we're just super excited about we call it CVAL for short, the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project, and the transformative economic opportunities it's bringing to our area. And I just think Dominion Energy is doing a lot of other really good things. It's a great company. We care about people. We care about education. We care about diversity. I'm on the Equity and Inclusion Council at Dominion Energy, where we make sure that everyone feels included and engaged in the company and the process. So I got to learn more about the stock myself, Colonel. I probably need to call you after this show, because you know more about it than I do. And I'm kind of a generalist, but I will say that, hang in there with Dominion Energy stock. This is actually a good time to buy it, because it's gone down a little. And I promise you it's going to go back up, because we have a great company, and just appreciate everybody's support that believes in us. And one of the things that I really like to do at Dominion Energy is show people that we might be a big company, but we're made up of small, little people that really care. And our Dominion Energy volunteer workforce is amazing. We will go out, and if you guys have a big volunteer project and you need people, give me a call. I can help coordinate it. I mean, the company, it's just a great company, and I have enjoyed working there.
Wonderful.
So I just want to, as we run out of time, it's time to go, but I just want to say Leah used to have a Sankofa program, and she told us about her trips to Africa and a chief telling her how important it is to pass down the history. And we dropped some history about your family, but I just wanted to talk about, you had a great grandfather who, I'm talking full circle for you, who was a slave, then a free man, and then a publisher, and had a newspaper that kind of got in trouble for some of the things he said. And your mother said he had to flee and hung out with Ida B. Wells.
That's right. That's right.
And I think his name was Jesse Duke, I believe his name was.
Jesse Duke. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. He was the only other journalist in the family, by the way. I'm the only one since him.
But I just had to mention that because with all the things you did, leading up to that, you did kind of come full circle, with what your grandfather did. So any other comments from the host before we sign out? We'll give Bonita the last word.
We need another 3 hours with Bonita. I have so many more questions.
We're going to do another show with her and her husband and financial show. I wanted to ask,
and we didn't get to any of that. So, Bonita, this has been inspiring. I've always loved you from the very first time I saw you on TV, and always a pleasure when I run into you and with your parents, and such an inspiration for so many individuals. So, but before we go off the air, I want to know, what advice would you give to young people who are looking to go into the field of journalism? Because it's changed tremendously since you went into the field of journalism. What advice would you give to young people who may have an interest now?
That's a good question. And people often ask me, do I miss it? Do I miss it? Do I miss being on TV? Do I miss doing the news? And I usually say, I miss what it was. I miss doing what it used to be, but it's not the same as it used to be, unfortunately. And there's a lot of amazing journalists in our community that are doing positive stories, but it's just unfortunate that too often they're overshadowed by the crime stories and the negative stories. But we have, an amazing group of journalists in Hampton Roads that are trying to tell good stories, and I'm grateful for that. I wish we could see more and more of that. But of course, we all have bosses, and we have to appeal to the advertisers because that's how they get paid. For journalists, I would say, follow your dreams. If you really want to be a journalist and you want to tell stories about the community, then follow your dreams. Talk to your professors and find out what the best way is to do it. There's two common tracks of doing it. You can start in a small market, which in Hampton Roads, we're a medium-sized market. So you can start in a small market and just kind of learn the ropes as you go. Or you can go to a wonderful journalism school like the University of Missouri, where you actually have a chance to do it, or Northwestern, or Syracuse, or Hampton University, which has Scripps Howard School of Journalism. Go. The way I like to do it is go to a journalism school so you can learn how to do it right and make sure that you are being ethical about it and you have journalistic integrity and standards. And you're not just somebody that just wants to be on TV. That you just, I'm pretty, I want to be on TV. That's not good enough. You have to be able to write. You have to care about the community that you're covering. And you need to develop relationships. Leah, we talked earlier, was it you and I, Leah, or Slim, talking about the Hampton Roads Black media professionals? They're still very active. So if you're African American, they love mentoring students, and they have some wonderful opportunities for that. And we have a great website, hrbmp.org, and we're active on social media. That's one way. Another way is the Hampton Roads Media Council, which I've also enjoyed being active on since I was at the Norfolk Sheriff's Office. So for, nearly 20 years now. And the Hampton Roads Media Council brings together media from all of the stations and media spokespeople, like myself, that come together and they talk about issues in Hampton Roads and what are the best ways to cover it and what are some of the things that journalists are not covering that need to be covered. So that's another organization. So I say connect with other people that are doing it, learn, and go for it.
Thank you so very much. Colonel?
Yes, Bonita, thank you for coming on and explaining. We've hit a lot of different topics in this short 1 hour period, and really we need 4 hours or more. But for those out there that was wondering about this, the Dominion Energy stock plan, just you can go online and look at their the dividend reinvestment program that they have. You can buy Dominion Resources, Dominion Energy stock for as little as $50. $50 a share, and it's a nominal brokerage fee. I think it's like $2. I will tell you, I've been owning this stock for over 40 years now. Started buying it when it was $16 a share. Care less of what the share price is, but I'm looking at the dividends. There's quarterly dividend checks that they got after you accumulate a lot of shares, because if you have time, you dollar cost averaging, and your shares will be worth more in the future, because when the stock dips, like you said, now you're buying more shares if you're doing the same amount of money, and when it goes up, you're buying less shares. But over time, the share price always goes up if you look at the stock market over the longevity time. And so that was a little financial literacy quote and little lessons that I just gave you.
Yep, and I will thank you for bringing that back up, because that was a good point you brought up, Colonel. And if you want to get more information about it, you can go right on our website, dominionenergy.com, and you can learn all about, there's so much information you can get there, how to reduce your bill, how to buy stock, lots of good information on the website. I would encourage you, if you would like to know more information about that, to go on the website and learn more about it. And I'm certainly happy to, if you want to follow up with me at some point, you have any specific questions, get back and share the information with me.
But thanks for coming on.
Again.
An hour. I didn't know what we were going to talk about for an hour.
Well, thanks again. Thanks again. And thanks for when you were trying to decide between Baltimore and Hampton Roads. And we want to thank Cadillac for helping you make that decision to stay here in Hampton Roads, and all the things you've done and continue to do. So we appreciate you. And we look forward to having you back on here, because we need more time with you, because, I think you have a lot to say from your experiences. So thanks, everybody. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment and share this show today. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Bonita. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Take care.
Be our guest on the Portsmouth